Look, I'd just come out of a pretty basic procedure. You know, I was checking my throat for some small abnormality. Wasn't a big deal. I was groggy from the anesthesia when I came out, a little short of breath. But the room came into clear focus, and 2 doctors I saw were heads down on their iPads. Everything seemed great. Hospitals in Washington, D.C., they're pretty high-tech places, and I was surrounded by the latest in technology, and I was tethered to a series of equipment, encouragingly beeping slowly and steady. All seems great, once again. The doctors were telling me how everything, in fact, couldn't have gone better. But then I noticed something. There was a hand on top of my hand, and I looked up, and it was a nurse. She had a very puzzled look on her face. She said, "You don't feel right to me." I looked at her, thought for a moment, I coughed. He said, "You know, I feel a little funny, but that's normal, right?" The doctors looked up from their iPads. They looked at all the monitors and everything was going on. Said, "Oh, come on, he's doing great. What are you talking about? We're going to have him out of here in 30 minutes." And the doctors literally left the room. So I felt things were great. But she looked at me again, much closer this time. She touched my face, and she sat back. She said, "Something's not right. You don't feel right." Well, what happened in the next 15 minutes, frankly, I barely remember at all. Apparently, all my vitals dropped nearly entirely. There was a lot of scuffling, and someone shouts, "Get him to emergency, get him to emergency." And they rolled my bed down the hallway. People were calling out, "Code blue, code blue." I remember one doctor saying to a nurse, "What has he got?" And she said, "We have no idea, but I think we're going to lose him." That, by the way, I learned later is what code blue means. Well, obviously, it all worked out. Apparently, I'd contracted some significant infection, which entered my lungs. I had pneumonia for 6 weeks. Welcome to hospitals. But the key thing I want to come back to is what that nurse said. You don't feel right. Now, we're entering a revolution in healthcare technology, unprecedented today. We've talked about some of it today, in fact. I can give one great talk with my excitement about the ramifications of how artificial intelligence and machine learning will forever change the way we discover and diagnose illness with a level of detail and assurance unimaginable a few years ago. How using science and genomics will allow certainty in the diagnosing of infectious disease at 1/100th of the cost of throwing the kitchen sink of pharmacology to understand what might be going wrong. How synthetic skin and organs will massively increase not only the quantity but quality of life. How gene therapy will make the lame walk. How gene editing may end any and all prenatal tragedy. Look at these 2 charts alone. In immunotherapy for cancer detection and treatment. Look at the quantity and speed of success in its earliest days. I mean, man, is true cancer really a cure of it around the corner? Actually and truly, not in some abstract future? Now, of course, this is all incredibly exciting. I'm a venture capitalist now. I love stuff like this. Our children, who were born in the last few years, they could easily live to 150. And by the way, not a 60-year continuation of 90, but strong, fully functioning life of contribution, impact, and happiness. Now, of course, this all raises a lot of big questions, moral as well as tactical. Almost every part of our being and how we have our place in the world comes into question. That may be a different TED Talk. I want to turn back to my nurse's statement again because I think she has something bigger. I think she has something more profound. To feel does not appear in any of our pre-med textbooks, but what she felt saved my life. And it begs the greatest question for us of all, not only in healthcare, but in a new century of unprecedentedly fast evolving technology, more important. What does it mean to feel? What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to have a role in that? What is the human's role there? One of my favorite health tech companies isn't quite a health tech company at all, but a facilitation of healthcare. Zipline uses drones to fly blood and other medical supplies to almost any location in Rwanda, particularly in the rural areas where roads easily wash out in rains and hill terrain is impossible to navigate. Getting supplies, if at all, can take hours or days. But by the time Zipline finishes the next launch area, they can reach anywhere in the country within 15 minutes. When I'm on the phone with a team on the ground, we are interrupted every 10 minutes by the buzzing sound of drones taking off and landing. The precision of these devices, of the tiny parachutes that land supplies, is beyond science fiction. It is invigorating. It is exciting. But what has moved me most, what is hard to measure in any impact metric, are these children. Each day and every day, local kids line up at the fences, sometimes 3 or 4, many days hundreds, to watch drones take off and land. When we put a man on the moon, some of you might even be old enough to remember, an entire generation came of age thinking different. A few perhaps wanted to be astronauts. Everyone thought anything was possible. These kids are watching Rwandans launch drones to save lives. They will all think anything is possible. rather, by the way, than thinking their inheritance was the tragedy of their parents' generation. Now, this is an interesting way to think about what it means to be human in the face of wild and impossible new technology. But here's another. Some years ago, my family went through one of those periods all of us in this room have gone through, or I fear to say we will all go through at some point. That wonderful, joyful man on the left was my best friend at the time, destined to be a great figure in American diplomacy. That beautiful woman on the right is my mother-in-law, who thought of nothing other than helping others and awaiting our first child. My wife was pregnant at the time. He lost his courageous battle to bipolar disorder. She lost hers to metastatic lung cancer. Now, this was some years ago, but I found in digging around the internet, I could find remarkable communities of people going through exactly what we were going through, but from our very particular lens. So, for example, I found a site called Friends of Men with Bipolar Disorder. But get this, I found a site called Son-in-Laws of Parents with Metastatic Non-Small Cell Adenocarcinoma, which is exactly what she suffered and was exactly my place in her journey. Now, the first thing I learned, that almost every instinct I had to help my friend and family was completely and utterly wrong. You have some sense of me, right? I like to ask 100 questions. I like taking notes. I do massive research. I talk to experts in the latest technologies. I found out what the latest new experiments might be. By goodness, I was going to beat the odds with this. Well, I learned in talking to people in my communities that that is the last thing someone with illness wants, at least at first. We are not our illness. We are ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. I learned to step back, to listen, to wait to be asked for help, and perhaps then gently share some of my learning. Patients and their loved ones are confused, shocked, scared. Listening and presence, first and foremost, was the most important technology I could offer. The second thing I learned was the importance of control in big things and small. My buddy and my mother-in-law were strong, contributing people. They didn't want to be coddled, and they did, with time, want to take ownership of their circumstances. They wanted to feel empowered. These communities, I found, were astounding for their candor. To this day, I never knew anyone's name, never met anyone in person, but we spoke to each other like we were family, man. We asked our questions, we shared our mistakes, we shared our pain, and eventually, we mourned our losses. Health challenges are the most personal experience, the one where many of us still want to remain anonymous. With rare exception do we go on Facebook and say, I'm humbled to have depression. And yet, the health journey is one of the few that all of us, 7 billion of us, share. Science, technology, medicine, obviously these are essential tools of health and wellness, but my greatest lesson of all, in partnership with the technology, is that the foundation of health and wellness is us. What, after all, is the purpose of technology? When we're facing illness, we need to remember 3 things. We are not alone, we are not crazy, and we have power. I co-founded this company, among several that I did, called HealthCentral.com, on these very 3 premises. I wanted to make content in communities I found so difficult to locate easy for others to find. In this instance, technology could unleash millions of people who have been there, who have lived these experiences. We call them expert patients, to help others on their journey. In such community, we are not alone. We know what we are feeling are felt by many others like us. We're not crazy. And we learn that if someone just like us, looks like us, comes from a background like us, is in our life, job, family circumstances, and they take action and it works, that means that we can take action and it will work too. And then we can pass that on to the next people who see it. I can question technical expertise. I can ask family and friends for help. I can tell them to back off. I can hire, or I could even fire a doctor and hire a new one. I am in control. Like those kids in Rwanda, I am empowered. Like that nurse by my side, I can bring my personal self, how I feel, to not only achieve better medical outcomes, but to be more than my diagnosis, to be me, to be we. In the revolutions we are creating technology, I hope this is never lost. May in fact this be where we all start. Thank you.